Hello everyone, welcome to the 11th part of iOS tutorial. In this tutorial, I finally show you how to create an app, how to create a useful app actually, a converter, convert miles to feet. And what should you watch for this tutorial is just how we connect the view element to the controller. And we are going to get familiar with some of the terms like IBOutlet, UITextField, UILabel, and IBAction. So let's move on. Okay, before creating the application, I want to show you what is the final product of our application. This is the converter app. It has miles label, and we have a field here for inputting miles, and we had a feet label, and underneath here, which is right now it is nothing, but it's a label actually, and it shows the result once we press this button. So for example, if I write 1 miles, and it should convert to the feet. If I put 2, it converts 2 miles to feet. So 2 miles is 10,000 something feet. So this is the final product. Let's go on and move how we can write this application. Okay, let's create the application. As you know, we have to click on Xcode, create a new project, and a single view, and we give it a name. We call it a converter app, and we put the prefix for this time, converter, and we just want it for iPhone for now, and hit next, the directory of the project, create, and it will show us the prefix that we just set up. We never had a prefix before, but right now I just put a converter as a prefix, so it put converter before the view controller and also app delegate. So let's see what's going on in the storyboard. And if you look at the storyboard, there's nothing inside of the storyboard, and the class that we are working on is the converter view controller, these two .h and .m file. Let's remove all of the unnecessary file like before from the .m file, and we have a blank, actually simple converter view controller. Okay, if we go back to the storyboard and think about what we need for a converter app, and we go back to the demo, we see that we have a label here and a field here. So let's put the label. We find the label here, which is label down here. Just drag it inside of the view and get help from the blue guidelines, and you just add it in, and if you double click on it, you can change the label. And if I tap on it, you can just name it miles and just click anywhere else. Then for the field here, we need a UITextField, which is text field. If we find it from this palette, it's a text field. I just grab this text field and use the blue guideline and put it here and make it a little bit bigger. It's not actually little. And then what we need is a label for feet here. So we grab a label again and use the guideline to align. And again we double click, or we can, instead of double click, we can go to the attribute here and change the label. And if I change the label to feet and press enter, and this is going to be a feet. Then we need another label for the result. Remember, we have a result here which is hidden here, and it's a label again. I just drag another label here and put it here. And since we don't have anything to put here, we just have, we will later on delete this label, but just for now I'll leave it as a label. And also we need the button here, which is a converter or convert button. And we drag a button here and put it in the middle of the screen. And if you double click on it or go into the inspector here, we can change the label of this button. So I just, for now, I just put it convert and enter. Okay, now we can start writing the code. We need to connect these view elements to the controller. What is the controller? Is our controller converter view controller and converter view controller.m. This is a .h file and this is .m file. So we need to connect somehow these controller to the view elements. How do we do that? We go back to the storyboard and we put this tuxedo and show. See, this is the name, and show assistant editor. It basically show two views at the same time. And you can see the view elements and the .h file. So we choose .m file because we don't want something public in our application. So that's why we use .m file. And how we connect. And pay attention to this part. For example, we want to this mile is completely fixed. We don't want to change it during the application. This one, we should see the changes from this text field. For example, if the user types something, we need to know what user types. So this is not fixed, so we need to connect it to the controller. This fit is also fixed because we don't change it from the whole program, and this one is also should be changed because this is the result of our application. So we need to connect this to the controller as well, and also the button. Of course, the button should be in touch with the controller. So how do we connect it? We just hold the control key on the keyboard and start dragging from this object to the controller between this interface and end, and remove it. Release the button and it will pop up this menu, and you just name the text field that you want. For this part we should just say miles, F-I-E-L-D, miles field, and all of them are set by default. For example, see, if I press connect, it will show me connect, and it will show the property. It creates the property weak, as I mentioned before. It's about the memory management. Non-atomic, it's not thread safe, and we have a terms here which is IBOutlet. IBOutlet is nothing. It's not the type. It just tells the compiler that it's a controller action, and it can show this something like this. So this IBOutlet is not a type, it's nothing, it's just for the compiler to understand this is something that connected to the view. And then we have a type which is UITextField, and it's the type of the text field here, and also the name of our field. Next thing that we need to connect is the result label. So again, we have to control drag, but to show you a little bit bigger, let me just zoom in actually, and get rid of this bar. And then I control drag to this area. It should be between interface and end, not implementation. See, it doesn't do anything, but as soon as I go to this area, it just show me that I can drop it down. And I would name this result label. And if you can see, this is the outlet, and I just say connect, and it will create a property which is weak, non-atomic, IBOutlet, but this time UILabel. The type is UILabel because we dragged a label, and we call it result label. The last piece that we have to connect from the view to the controller is the convert button that sits here. So we have to again control drag from this convert, but this time inside of implementation to the end, because we're not going to make a property, we are going to make a target action, which is in model view controller. And previous tutorial we learned how it works. So it's a target action, so we have to put it inside of the implementation and end file. If I release it, it just said what is the name of this button, and I would say convert pressed, and the type, it's a UI button here, and we don't have any sender right now, so or argument, we don't have any argument for this method, so we just have the UI button, and I pressed connect, and it creates again a circle, and if I hover it, just hover it, it will show that where it connects, and it has an IBAction. Again, it's like it's returning nothing, it's returned void, but the IBAction means that this method is connected to this button. This is just for the compiler. Okay, we're done with the UI element and connecting UI to the controller. So let's get some space and have just one class at a time, and we need just .m file. So now we have plenty of time, plenty of room for development, and we want to see how we want to have an action on this button. And if we just run the program now, we would have just a button with some labels that is doing nothing, but at least we can see the view elements are connected together and everything works fine, and we just have to write code for acting when the user press the convert button. Right now, see, we can just press and we can start writing in this text field, but nothing would happen. But what we need is just when we press convert, it should do something. So for now, it does nothing. But how we can convert the miles to feet? And let me just put some comments. And it's 1 mile actually is equal to 5283.8 feet. So we need to have this formula in order to calculate the miles in feet actually. So first of all, we have to get the value that user types in the miles field. So we need to get the value out of this field. How we can do this? So we can use the method that we have in text field. So it is self dot miles field dot and the method called text. So what does this method does? It gets the value out of the text field. If you remember, we connect the text field to this property, so this method returns whatever user types in that field. So what type of this field we need? We need a float value. So in order to get the float value out of this, we use square bracket notation. So we send a message to this and say we want the float value. Okay, so see this line? We send a message at first to text field to return the value of your text field by using this method. And then we convert this text to float value. Now we have to assign it to a float variable. So we say float miles equals to this. Now we have miles variable. So how we can convert it? We know this formula. We just have to multiply this miles to 5280.0. So we define another float and call it foot or feet equals to miles, the variable that we have, and multiply by 5280.0 and semicolon. And then we have this result label. The result label is this one. So we have to change this label when the convert pressed. So how we can change it? We can say, and we can access this variable by say self.result label, which we defined here, and then we say, okay, we want a method called text. The text, this time, it sets the value. Remember, this time we get the value out of the text field, but since it's on the left hand side of the equation, we just set it. We say we want to set to this, so we can say equals to feet. But if I do this, I'll give an error. Why? Because it needs NS string and we have a float type on the right side of the equation. So we need to we need to convert this float to string. So let's try to see if float has a method called string value. But as you can see, the compiler didn't even suggest anything. But anyway, we just write it down. But you can see it gives us again error because feed doesn't have this kind of method. So what should we do in order to convert this float type to string? This time we use NSString, NS number, and wrap this feed with NS number and then get the string value out of it. So let's do this. We would say NS number with float, and then we say a feed. And what we need here, we need a string value. So string value, and then close bracket. So first of all, let me get just more room here. First of all, if you look at just this square bracket, it sends a message to NS number and converts and wrap the feed with NS number. And then once it wraps it, it will become an NS number type. And it then send a message and get the string value of this NS number and assign it to this label. So if I run the program, it will give me this. And if I start typing, so see, first of all, if I type 1, I can see it converted, but you can see the button is under the keyboard. And also if I type 14 and convert it, see, you have dot 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 dot. So let's fix this. If you look at the files and storyboard, first of all, we need to move this button up and also make this label a little bit bigger. So let's run it again. And now the button is no longer under the keyboard. And 3, 4, convert, we have plenty of room for here. So this is the converter app that you created, and we're done.